This episode of Monty's Minute is brought to you by Audible. For a free 30-day trial and a free audiobook, head on over to audible.com/Gamebreaker. What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Monty's Minute, episode 25 from March 19th, 2013. I'm Gary again, and you're watching Gamebreaker TV, the video game business insider show with the one and only Mr. Monty Sharma. How are you, sir? I'm
great, Gary. How you doing?
Good. Got a busy couple weeks coming up, huh? Head over to PAX, head over to GDC.
Yeah, I actually spent about an hour and a half today just getting all of the party invites into my schedule. It's going to be nuts.
I'll hopefully see you at GDC, so
yeah,
partying it up. All right, let's start the show off this week. We have a video here from Eric at 82 Apps. Tell me a little bit about 82, or should we just go right into the video?
No, let's talk about it a little bit, and then we see the video. So 82 Apps actually won the Mass Digi Game Challenge this year, and they had, a great game. So, his pitch was, when you see these movies and they have all this sort of fake hacking, and it looks so exciting, and everybody's got like 8 monitors and 3D stuff going on and all this sort of stuff with really driving music, and he had this montage of that stuff, and he said, well, I wanted to make a game that kind of simulated fake hacking. And it's really kind of a neat sort of puzzle game where you've got a grid and your opponent's grabbing nodes and you're grabbing nodes and you're firing off viruses and spikes and things like that. It's a lot of fun. It's actually just been just available on the App Store, and so that's it. That's him. That's his game. And let's hear a story.
All right, let's check it out. Eric from 82 Apps.
Okay. My name is Eric Kasmussen, and I've been building indie games for about 3 years full-time now. And I really don't have any background in computer science or game development. One day I just kind of had an idea and started programming. As a kid, I was always messing around with creating little board games and programming a little bit. But just one day I decided to give it a shot. The iPhone was just coming out, and it seemed like a really great interface for games. So I downloaded the tools and just started programming, and my first game was it was pretty minimal and it didn't work out that well. But you just keep trying, and every game you can see improvement over and over. And so now I'm working out of Intrepid Labs here, and I just come in every morning and I just work on what I think is important that day. I have to wear a lot of different hats. Like right now I'm kind of in the PR phase, so I'm the PR person for the team. I'm the QA, I'm the developer, I'm the designer. So you have to kind of get comfortable with all these different roles. But on the other hand, it's also kind of fun because you get to see all these different aspects, and you can feel yourself kind of getting better at all these over time. So it's a tough market. There's a lot of competition. It's really hard to get noticed. But if you kind of team up with other indies and you just keep working on your skills, working on your games, you can find ways to stand out and get yourself noticed.
What sort of games have you launched?
So the first kind of major game that I launched was called New World Colony, and it's basically a strategy board game, but built for the iPad and the iPhone. I wanted a game where there wasn't really any randomness that I feel kind of breaks a lot of board games. Like Risk, it feels kind of frustrating in that sense. So I wanted a game that played a little more like chess, where it was just kind of strategy without dice rolling. But at the same time, you can kind of upgrade buildings and conquer territory, and that has online asynchronous multiplayer, which is great for the platform. So you can just open the game, take a turn, send it off. You can have 3 or 4 games going at the same time. It's a really great way to play a game, and a great way to build up an audience too, because you don't need this huge critical mass of players. You can have just a couple people that start playing one by one, and over time that builds up. And then after that? After that, I built a game called Shape Shatter, which was kind of my. I have a background in psychology, and I wanted to create a game that had every psychological element that makes a game addicting without actually having any real gameplay. So I wanted like as simple as possible game, and it's basically you're tapping on shapes. But every action you do gains you experience points, you're leveling up, you're earning random items. So there's no skill, there's no strategy, there's no way to win, you just keep gaining levels. And it's really this kind of psychological experiment. That was mainly just for fun and to kind of test out the kind of freemium model, kind of just an exercise that I wanted to see what I could build. And then my most recent game is this game called Pwn, which is a competitive hacking simulator, but it's done in a very Hollywood movie style. So there's a large 3D interface, and you're rotating it around, and you're launching viruses, and you're fighting other hackers trying to take over the network.
Perfect.
So a competitive hacking simulator. The second one sounds really interesting. That's like a really interesting experiment of just a psychological experiment in shapes and no real game skill at all, but just kind of seeing how the psychology works between like leveling up and getting loot, so to speak.
Yeah, well, that's a lot of what Peter Molyneux's game Curiosity was as well, right? It's, all right, let's explore what makes games drive people to do things. And one of these days I'm going to write this piece on why I play games when I stop liking them. There's some amazing things in game design that just keep you going. And so he like a lot of indies, he graduated with a psychology degree, wanted to make games, and so he's a self-taught programmer. He experiments with ideas and tries to, he's looking for something that's neat and interesting. So,
do you think a lot of it? I mean, I'm just surprised when you said that he's almost pretty much a one-man development team. He's doing everything. Is that kind of the norm though in the industry, in the indie market at this point? Because I feel like the indie market's gotten so competitive. I would almost imagine it's like a mini corporation for a lot of these companies.
Yeah, well, we had a call. We're doing a panel at PAX on sort of starting as an indie and making it. And so when we had this sort of organizing call, somebody came up with, well, what's really an indie? And, my response to that is, look, I look at somebody who, one, doesn't publish games for other people, and two, you're looking at somebody who is, small, they're making it, they've got a few titles, but it's an internal effort. And so what you've got is you have some indies who are, fairly substantial, and that they'll build up, and you'll have 100 employees and things like that. But it's a pyramid shape, right? So there's a few who have 20 or 30 employees, and then there's a whole lot of them that's really one guy. And occasionally, we've talked repeatedly about, going to industry events and that. Well, at industry events, they'll meet other guys who are one-guy operations and say, hey, you're a really good artist. I'm working on this game. Would you help me out this way? And,
Combine our skill sets.
Yeah. And they come together and they separate and all that stuff. Everybody looking for that big hit that turns it into a job.
Yeah, and I think that sort of shows, how we've been talking now for 24, 25 episodes here on, you keep bringing up, like, just go do it. And there's, sort of the proof is in the pudding with Eric here. So check it out, 82 apps. And how is is it PWN? PWNED?
Yeah, PWN.
Okay,
no, just PWN.
Just PWN on the App Store?
Yep. And it's awesome. It's a lot of fun.
All right, check it out. So let's get to some questions this week. First up from Jim Bergevin. Jim says, I know this was touched on in past episodes, but with this week's release of SimCity 5, you knew this was coming, Monty, didn't you? And the completely predictable launch day / week woes, I think a revisit of the orders and revisit of the topic is in order. So Jim says, at what point will the gaming industry realize that forcing an online-only requirement for games that are primarily single-player, non-MMO games is not beneficial or desired by gamers? He says, I'm not always online, and in some instances can't be online, such as when like my hurricane knocks out my internet for 3 or 4 days. It's times like those that I can kick back and enjoy some quality gaming with my single-player games. Jim.
Yeah.
Has been a rough month for EA.
it has been a rough month, and I feel for them, but there were a few mistakes that were made, and then we can come back and talk about the whole constant online trend. But there was, clearly an error in how they provisioned and what they had available at launch. They should have known better. And that, I can't make any excuse for them. It was an error, and they should have dealt with it. Getting people to post on social media in your favor was stupid, dangerously stupid. It just, whoever did that should get canned. It's that level of error. Anybody in game knows you don't want to mess with the public. You don't want to troll. You don't want to fake, because if you do, somebody will find out and they'll shred you. All of these things that was poorly handled, and it's the sort of thing that if a friend of mine back is in the security business, he always talks about things failing open or failing closed. And the whole point of that is you can assume that things will go wrong. And if things are going to go wrong, well, how is it going to fail? So, in the case of something like this, if it failed to a reduced offline mode and said, hey, look, we're not able to get you online, here it is offline, that would have made a big difference. They would have gotten, dragged through, well, why don't they have enough servers, blah, blah, blah. But people wouldn't have been quite as, violently upset about the whole thing. And that's the piece where I see sort of the trend going, or where I would like to see it going. You're going to always see an increasing amount of online connectivity requirements, whatever. Part of the reason is they don't want to just sell you one box and walk away from you. They want to be able to patch it. They want to be able to pull analytics. They want to be able to work, in-game stores, freemium things, and they want you to connect with other people, because that's been shown to increase how long you play the game, how satisfied you are with it, and what you're willing to pay. So they want you online. They need to do it right. The best example that I have for that is there's a game called Spice Invaders on the iPad. And it's a tower defense game, and it's got an online component. But when you're not connected, it says, okay, we'll still play. I'll keep score, but you're not going to get the power-ups and other things that you get if you're online. As soon as you go online, I'll fire your score up, and you'll get all those points. But here's a limited way we can play offline.
How much do you think that would have added to development, though? Because, and I'm going to take the other side, because, the EA's statement was that, offline mode didn't really fit into their vision of what SimCity was. And I can kind of understand, especially, the second thing that a lot of people are kind of calling out a lot are the map sizes, right? They're much smaller than the average SimCity person. So they've obviously done that deliberately from day one. They said that this is going to be an online game. We want players connected to each other, playing with them. We are going to make maps smaller so they are codependent on each other and actually interact with each other. That is the game that we're creating. So now to create an offline mode, you'd have to now have offline maps, have single player maps. I mean, I think.
No, you can just say that, look, in offline mode, you're only able to do these things. You can, there's a simulator, so I can try different budgets strategies. Things like that let me do something offline rather than just cut me off entirely. StarCraft actually fails that way. So if you can't connect to the internet, StarCraft says, okay, you're not going to get your achievements, but you can still play the game. There's got to be something like that, and this is the thing that I push game developers to, is to say, look, what can you do now in an MMO? Yes, I understand that you're offline, you got nothing. But in other games, we're going to go online, but let's do it in a reasonable way.
All right, next up, this one in from Max McKay from Austin, Texas. Says, hey guys, love the show. Definitely a great perspective on game decisions that I think can do a lot to help gamers understand that weird confluence of art and corporate money. Well, thanks to you for watching, Max. Says, you talked a while back about the seemingly industry-wide standard MMO subscription fee of $15. Because I was wondering if there's some kind of accepted industry standard relating to how much a free-to-play gamer in an MMO has to contribute to be considered successful for the company. Thanks for taking my question. Keep up the good work, Max McKay in Austin. Is there a specific dollar amount industry-wide?
Yeah, there isn't, because there isn't a lot of openness as to what their ARPU is. So the ARPU, average revenue per user. And this is one of the things I keep trying to think of ways to get at, is if there's a way all these companies would share marketing costs. Here's what it costs us to land a user. Here's the average number of users who pay us, what do they pay, how often, all that sort of stuff. That would help other game developers figure out if they were doing well or not doing well. And so it's almost the kind of thing that if it's sort of one of these free-to-play AAA MMOs, their target has got to be that sort of $15 ARPU. So that's what they're looking for. Now, will they be happy with less than that? You bet. They'll keep working to bring it up. From what I've heard from a few people, is in general they get more than that, and that's why they go free to play. So they're making more money for more people, which is what makes it worthwhile. But on the mobile side, a little different. In Japan, they actually make about 10 times the ARPU compared to North American games. So there's something completely different about what they're doing there.
Now, what is do you have any insight into like what is the what's the percentage of players that actually do spend money in a free to game? Is it like 1% and they're just all whales and they spend an insane amount of money?
No, they're depending on the game, I've heard everything from 5% to 25%. I find the 25% not entirely credible. Like usually when I hear that, I'm thinking, okay, how are you shading the numbers? We're going to only count people who play the game 3 times, and then we're going to count them as users, not everybody who touches the game or things like that. So, there aren't any solid definitions of what these things are. So the bulk of the users that pay pop in and they'll only spend once. Game developers have found that, look, it takes 2 or 3 payment actions before that person is committed enough to your game to keep paying. And within that subset of people, there's less than 1% of these whales. So these are people who, they're described as completionists, where I want to have everything that's offered. So if you sell all these kinds of armor, I want them. I want a full set. I want this to match that. And so they will spend remarkable amounts of money. And, Matt, in a follow-up to his question, actually said that he had signed up for Lotro's lifetime subscription. Paid him $200-300, loves the game, would love to pump more money into it. It's fun, he's enjoying himself, and he'd spend money on doing more. So it's an interesting balancing act for the games as to where they break these things down.
All right, next up, this one in from HP says, love listening to the show while doing dailies. Glad we could kick your ADD in and give you something to do. He says, I'm an electrical engineer for a defense contractor, and we use process-driven development. How is the game development industry? If you are familiar with it, are game developers very high on the capability maturity model integration, also known as CMMI scale, or are things done solely via undocumented processes? First up, do you want to break this down and explain to the viewers?
Yeah. So the military in particular does things in very regimented ways, as you'd expect. Part of the reason is they need a whole bunch of people to do things exactly the same way. So, when you put 2 pieces together, it doesn't blow up, or it blows up the right way. So they spend a lot of time up front specifying everything out. You know, back when I was doing consulting many years ago, there was a project we started to work on, and it required mil-spec, which is the military specification model. And it was a royal pain in the neck because you had to, before you started anything, detail out what every screen would look like, what every button click would do, all of that sort of thing. Now, you know, on the game side, there is a documented process. You know, any game company that's using Agile has their own variation of it, so how they like to use Agile, but it's nailed down. So, you know, the difference with Agile is you come at it saying that for this sprint, what are the most important things we need to do? And there'll be lots of discussion and debate, and you have things in what they call the backlog. And you'll take things off the backlog and you'll put them into the sprint saying, okay, here's the total amount of engineering time we have for this sprint, and we've assigned that much work from our backlog. When they do this then, and you're into the sprint, you'll sometimes find that, look, this task was actually harder than we expected, so we don't have enough time, we're going to drop tasks. They always finish sprints on time. And so you get to the end of the sprint and you look at what you have. All right, we did these things. In the next sprint, what are the next most important things? Things that we dropped before, new things that have been added. Because as you do that, you begin to see things take shape and you can adjust them. Particularly in game design, where at the beginning of building the game, you're not absolutely sure of how things are going to work. And if you specify them and build them, you're probably wrong. So you need a little more organic process. So they do have a way nailed down, but there's a lot of flexibility.
Yeah, and I think he's got a follow-up question here that I think kind of follows into that. So he says, in the defense industry, we have a crunch time. We still accurately record the actual hours performed. Excuse me. Even though I'm a salaried exempt employee who will be paid for 40 hours of work, if I work 60 hours in a week, my time card will show those 60 hours allocated to the appropriate job codes. These actual metrics are then flowed upward so that in the future, other projects can predict that similar tasks will take 60 hours and actual planning can take place. They can staff up, things like that. So long story short, his question is, does that actually happen in the game development also? Or is it, again, there's just a lot more of a gray area?
Yeah, it's a little of both. So yes, if you talk to a seasoned programmer and you say, how long does it take to write, you know, this sort of a subsystem, they can tell you. And they're pretty accurate, and everybody has a good sense of that. Same thing with artists. Okay, we need to produce so many items that look like this. Okay, no problem. It's going to take this long. You know, an artist can produce so many of these a day. Here's what we can do. Now, the problem, though, in game development is, one, games tend to push the front edge of technology. So, hey, we just got a new lighting system in. Now, nobody's used it.
Learning time, ramp up, yeah, right. Education, everything.
And what's it do? There's also an artistic element. Hey, all right, we cranked out, 18 objects. You know what? They don't look right. This doesn't really fit with this. Oh, hey, we realized that this combat system is way too complex. It fell apart in playtesting. So we're going to go this way with a simpler combat system, but it means all these items that we had put together for crafting and all that, they're all gone. We're not going to use them. So all of those sorts of things that happen in game development that is less predictable than when you're doing enterprise software, military development, any of these sorts of things, where they work really hard to squeeze out uncertainty. Games are inherently uncertain because you're looking for that fun, you're looking for that, pizzazz. The neat thing, last weekend before, when we did the game challenge, we had 40 different teams that were pitching a game. And, you send the feedback to the teams where, the judges weren't really thrilled with your art style. And it's the sort of thing of when you see all these things together and you say, okay, this has to fit with that, it has to look right, it has to be inspiring. Not a simple thing to do. The art itself could be just fine, technically right, but it just doesn't move somebody.
Doesn't feel right. Totally different thing. All right, last up today, Chris. He says, Monty, love the show. He says the last year or so, there's been a lot of buzz about internet providers testing data caps on portions of their subscriber base or outright implementing caps altogether. He says my provider is Comcast, and I have a 250 gigabyte monthly cap. With Steam and Origin and other content distributors that have games that can be, 5 to 20 gigs per download, then you add in Netflix, maybe some other stream services out there. There may come a time when you exceed your data cap. Is this something that the game industry is actively thinking about and concerned at it's on some level?
Yeah, so this isn't something I've heard a lot about. I don't hear a lot of people complaining about it. The game industry generally stands for net neutrality, which is, everybody pays the same rates. So if you think about it, Comcast also has their own version of Netflix. Comcast is essentially streaming all of your on-demand content. So if they sort of cap or do things to restrict Netflix access to a Comcast subscriber, then the FTC will get involved and, they'll get in trouble. So there's that limit there. The other thing that's good is continued competition in the space. So, where I live, we have both the cable company, we have Verizon Fios, and we have some over-the-air stuff with WiMAX going on. And in some parts of Boston, RCN has a network that overlays. When you've got that sort of competition, it becomes really easy to snag the customers from the other guy if they're implementing caps that are onerous or unreasonable. Because the people who are most likely to use that much data are probably the people who pay for all sorts of cable stuff, the highest speed internet, all the things that make them a really good and profitable customer. So I think the data cap part for now is really about, there's some people who are just, they're mucking about on the edges. They're pushing the limit as far as they can. And that's annoying the people, the network operators. It probably isn't hurting their network or causing any real issues. I actually find that part hard to believe, but it irks them. It annoys them. Hey, look, there's 0.1% who are being jerks. What are we going to do about it? All right, let's slap this on. Now, if you find the average customer or the average good technical heavy using customer is coming up against those caps, I bet they move them up or they change things. I can't see them doing it.
If you got a question for Monty's Minute, make sure to send it in to Monty at Gamebreaker.tv. If you have a video question, record yourself on YouTube and send us the link. That's Monty at Gamebreaker.tv. If you want to follow Monty on Twitter, you can follow him at Monster, MONTSTER27. Of course, you can email him, Monty at Gamebreaker.tv. You can follow Gamebreaker TV at Gamebreaker TV on the Twitters. Go to our Facebook page, facebook.com/Gamebreaker TV. And we do the show live every single Tuesday. Get my day screwed up. Tuesday at 3 PST. Monty, have a great week. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week.
See you, Gary.